Hello, everybody. This is Caleb with Real Birding, and I'm
Will.
And we are very pleased today to have an extremely special guest related to the Ferruginous Hawk that has been the source of so much attention over the last week. This is Stu Mackenzie from Birds Canada. Thanks so much for joining us, Stu.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So, Stu, what do you do with Birds Canada?
So my title is the Director of Strategic Assets. That's a very vague title for, I'm in charge of all of our physical infrastructure on the landscape, and that includes our headquarters, the Long Point Bird Observatory, Thunder Cape Bird Observatory, a network of Canadian bird observatories called the Canadian Migration Monitoring Network, and I also oversee the MODIS wildlife tracking system. So I have a range of responsibilities in the organization, mostly focused on migration ecology, but also sort of our operations on the ground across the country.
Is Birds Canada NGO, or is it part of the Canadian agency network?
So Birds Canada is a nonprofit organization in Canada dedicated to the conservation of wild birds and their habitats. So we manage a variety of citizen science programs across the country. So all the breeding bird atlases in Canada are coordinated by Birds Canada in coordination with the federal government and provinces. You know, Project Feeder Watch and eBird in Canada is us. The MODIS wildlife tracking system, bird observatories, like there's 40 programs across the country. So somewhat analogous to Cornell, Audubon, and ABC all wrapped into one.
Nice. So this Ferruginous Hawk, Ireo, that so many people have heard about now, how did you come to meet this animal? What's the story there?
Yeah, well, we first heard about Ireo in early May. The picture started circulating when she was discovered in Ireo after being hit by a car, and then was sent to a rehab facility. So immediately we were in touch with the banders that from the Hawkcliff Raptor banders that work with that rehab facility to band most of the rehab birds that are being released. So the plan from day one was, of course, to band it. But I also have a long-term study on vagrant birds where we tag them either with MODIS transmitters. And this is the first bird that we've tagged with a GPS transmitter like that one. So it's not the MODIS wildlife tracking system. It's a separate ES420 GPS cellular tag that donated by Cellular Tracking Technologies for the project. And that's because the hawks are a bigger bird. They can handle a heftier tag. We're accumulating data on a variety of species. We've probably tagged over 30 species in different geographies and different situations. And it's going to take us some time because, as you know, vagrant birds aren't common. And then it's even harder to get them in situations where you can actually track them.
Right.
But over time, we'll be able to test some of these hypotheses. And being able to track a Ferruginous hawk was certainly a very unique opportunity. So once we heard that she was in rehab and then there was a good chance that it was going to be released and that she was feisty, we started to mobilize. Yeah, it was a quick mobilization of a great team, and then everything went according to plan.
It's so cool. Do you know about any other Ferruginous hawks in North America that have that technology, the GPS tracking technology on them?
This is the first one, certainly, that's been tagged extra limitedly. And I think, as you guys have noted earlier, it's, to my knowledge, the first time anything like this has been done, where individuals, where we're tracking a vagrant bird in a unique landscape, and people have the opportunity to try and see it. There's of course other situations where, you know, petrels and whooping cranes and things like that have added to state checklists or areas, but you just hear about it a year later or see it on a website and you're like, it flew over. Michigan.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. We for a long time we've been thinking about this issue and maybe almost fantasizing that at some point a researcher would contact us and say, "Hey, there's a bar-tailed godwit, hanging out at Point Moulier. You all should run down there and get it." And I am not aware of this happening before. I mean, it's just super exciting, and even without the real-time information, to be able to actually track it down, with only general hints. We were pretty surprised by that. What were your thoughts?
I could tell by the general discourse. I was monitoring what people were saying on social media and Discord, because this has been, as much as it is a scientific ornithological experiment, it's also a little bit of a birder sociological experiment. How are people reacting to this type of information? What's the appropriate etiquette with respects to sharing information of not just a GPS tracked bird, but a very charismatic one that may allow people to get on it and track it carefully. I think more than anything in Michigan, the landscape did you the biggest favor, because there's only, as you noted, there's only half a dozen places in the counties where it was likely to be. Now, it could have just been hanging out in a tree and you would have been out of luck. But I think, you had the areas scouted out and you had the motivation, or what I call it, you had the gumption. So I was on the more positive side of 50-50, because after that, and after you started looking, it was really just up to the bird. She could have taken off, and then you just would have been left holding your binoculars.
Yeah.
But you called it right with her being in the muck flats. But even the spot that she was in was still a pretty extensive area. So if she was just in a little divot, you never would have had a chance. So she did you a lot of favors that day. So I'm glad.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm glad you tracked her down. I was just going to say that it's helpful as well for us. Like, it was never our intent to put you on the bird. Birding's supposed to be a bit of a challenge, but we're happy to share that kind of regional level information with birders. But even so, we got some excellent information that she was eating roadkill. She looked alive and well and healthy. There was no field observations of any discomfort or abnormal behavior as far as I could tell. But you guys saw her. She was a normal, happy, healthy Ferruginous hawk. And that's really important information, both from the rehabilitation perspective. Yes, she was successfully rehabilitated, at least up to this point, and also good from the tracking perspective, from the scientific perspective, that we're tracking a pretty wild bird. There she is, beautiful.
Yeah. Our friend Isaac Polanski had the opportunity to take very good pictures up close as this bird flew over. I'd be remiss not to show it in this video here.
Yeah, and was he the one who gave the weather prediction when she moved into Michigan?
Yes, he is.
He called it. He was like, she's going to end up around Saginaw. And she must have seen his post.
Isaac is a storm chaser first and a birder second. So that's very adroit of him to be able to make such predictions and carry through with it.
Yeah, well, those are good bedfellows.
One of the things I was curious about, because obviously this is mostly a scientific endeavor from your end, I'm curious who funded it. And I'm also curious, from the idea of crossover between ornithology and the birding community. These are two communities that there's a storied history there. They're not always collaborating, and there's some citizen science, but to be able to take, and not only birders, but the public more broadly, because there are so many people. There's something like 70 million people in the US who are interested in birds or consider themselves at least low-level birders. And I'm just curious, how do you see that engaging the public, like we're trying to do with this interview, can really impact the research and impact conservation?
Like birding by its nature is a form of ornithology, especially the second you submit an eBird checklist or a photo die naturalist. You're part of the community. And then ornithology and conservation, there's a very subtle, it's not even subtle, it's just sort of unspoken sociological and public and community aspect that's important. So there's sort of those aspects of ornithology, and then there's the pure science and direct research aspect of it. And this project has components of that with respects to understanding what happens with vagrant birds. And we can maybe get into the details of vagrancy if you'd like. And this bird in particular created a great opportunity to both share the capabilities of the technology in a very public format, which would garner a lot of attention, as well as provide valuable information on, the success and behavior and survival of rehabilitated birds, and the success, movements, and survival of vagrant birds. So there's like all these check boxes with this bird in particular. We knew that it would, because it was so rare in Ontario, it would grab a lot of attention, and that was kind of a side bonus that we would have done it with anything, even if it was the ugliest bird that no one was interested in. But there was this public outreach component to it that would be very important, both for the project, but for bird conservation as a whole, just to bring people up to speed on what the technology is capable of, and what we can do in real time with certain situations.
Moving in a slightly different direction, I think a lot of the listeners are going to want to know, how high is Erio flying and why, and also what are your all expectations for, is she going to be okay? Where might she go? And that seems to be the question that people are asking us the most.
Good question. I don't know, and that is the whole point. Is that nobody knows, and we would know even less. Just imagine we just let her, rehabilitated, we let her go with a band on it. Chances are we'd never see her again, and we'd learn nothing unless
Yeah.
yeah, unless we got really lucky and that band turned up somewhere. So it was an unprecedented opportunity just to answer those types of questions. Well, what is she going to do? And that might actually help inform what other birds in the future might do. Is it worth rehabilitating birds? If is one question. If they don't survive, then but this is already is a great success story of what they can do. Ferruginous hawks are powerful flyers, and they're beautios, so they get up into the stratosphere and they just glide. So it's very likely that she showed up in Ontario because she was blown off track by a big storm. There was a lot of unsettled weather in April. She could have been around in Ohio or anywhere for quite a while, so it's hard to. Sometimes you can link vagrant birds to the storm directly, like there's a storm and a vagrant shows up the next day, but often there's days or weeks in between. So since it's very likely that she was blown off course, birds have incredible internal compasses. So in my view, it was very likely that she would have found her way home. But then obviously, since she was, well, we don't know if she was actually hit by a car or not, but she had a run-in with traffic, as we say. And since she had that encounter, she was actually put on. Her reorientation home was put on hold, so to speak. And then after we released her, it was certainly our hope that she would make her way back to the west. And it would appear that she's doing so, but I'm a little bit reluctant to say, yeah, she's going home, because she still has a long way to go. She's in Indiana right now, in pretty much smack dab in the center of the states. She could go east. She could go west. She could go south. Like, she could go anywhere, right? And she's been tracking west, which is a good sign. We want her to go west, but she may not. So it's anybody's guess right now. Either way, it'll be incredibly informative. And they are ground squirrel specialists, like open prairie habitat. So the sooner she can get west, the sooner she'll find food and sort of be in her comfort zone. In the meantime, we are a little bit concerned that she's able to find enough prey. Now we do have numerous observations of her eating roadkill. And when you look at her GPS maps, she often stops at certain areas, and you can see that she's stopped on a road. And that's good because she's finding food. It's bad because that's how she ended up in rehab in the first place.
Yeah.
But it may be that roadkill is what gets her home, you know. But she's also a raptor, like an adult raptor with years of experience of being a voracious hunter. So if she sees something that she could go for, I have no doubt that she will. It's just that they're also very opportunist. So if there's roadkill, I have no doubt she'll go for it. Now, in terms of how high she's flying, it varies on the day. So some days when there's no thermals and low cloud ceiling, she's been staying low. So just perched or not really flying around. But on those days like the one that you saw her, either you get a blue dome or a mixed cloudy sky and a good wind, Her typical pattern during the day has been to sort of stay low till 10, 11 in the morning, and then she goes for a flight and she gets high. And
We
they're
noticed.
they're the largest buteo, huge long wings. So she just floats. And the highest altitude we've seen so far, but I haven't looked at the data in great detail, is about 1,800 meters. So 6,000 feet.
That is unbelievable. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody necessarily would have expected that. How far can she see at that height?
It's hard.
It's got to be
I have
20,
no idea, but
like
20
20
to 30,
miles. Yeah,
I was going to say 20 to 50 kilometers. So yeah, 20 miles. Like,
right.
but just think about how far you can see in a plane, right? And our eyesight is far inferior to a Ferruginous Hawk. So like that day that you guys saw her and she veered southwest, I have no doubt that she got up, saw the lake, saw Grand Rapids. Like, she knew what she was doing, and she went around Grand Rapids to the east, and then she went around Kalamazoo to the other side. Like, they some of that is probably just circumstance, but I bet a lot of it just has to do with reading the landscape. And then you can see by the habitats that she's selecting as well. She's not stumbling upon open spaces. She's finding them and she's going to them, and you can see that with her tracks. She's getting up there, and then her trajectory is heading to the next spot that she wants to be, which is a nice open landscape. So all that stuff, it's a little like circumstantial and observational data, but over time, and once we sort of finish her story, we'll hopefully be able to put a very good, compelling piece of work together about her journey.
So I can't help but hear a sort of emotional connection that maybe you feel for this bird and what it represents. Am I onto anything there?
It's not just this. It's not just this bird. It's any bird you tag. So I have a career in tagging birds, and you develop a very special relationship with those that you work on, and even as birders, you develop a special relationship with certain birds or all birds. So for me, like blackpolls, I have a special place in my heart. They did before I started tracking them, but I did a lot of work on them. So every time you hear a blackpoll, it's just you're transplanted to either the Amazon or the boreal. And then Erio, we had an intimate moment, at the 10 minutes where we were putting the tag on her. You get an attachment to these birds. But yeah, any bird that I've ever tagged, you learn a bit more. And any bird that you research, you understand and you learn their intricacies more than you would otherwise. And you can do that, and you do that with birding as well. But it kind of depends on the amount of time that you spend with those birds in different areas, how well you can get to know them. Some birds you don't get to know at all. You just see them once and they're gone. And other birds, you get to know really well. And the habitat as well. It's just like birding's the ultimate gateway drug to wildlife in the natural world. So eventually it gets to the point where you're driving down the street and you're like, oh, there should be an all-sided flycatcher here, and you pull over and
Yep.
so, and that's, yeah, it's kind of I like to think of it as it's kind of a superpower that we all share.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other questions I had written here was to ask whether you're a birder, but I think you've already answered it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would have, like, these kind of projects get dreamt up if you're not one. Like, you have to, you got to be paying attention, and there's just a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of questions waiting to be answered if you're in the game. And then it also just provides you have an additional motivation besides just the scientific or the personal one. It just becomes more of a life mission at that point.
Absolutely. We definitely agree with you on that. Well, it's incredible. And I've picked up on this as a birder throughout my life and career. There is so much going on in the sky and the atmosphere that we are not privy to because you just simply cannot see it. It takes a rainstorm to bring these birds down. Like you just said, I've seen a flock of American golden plovers right over downtown Grand Rapids with a rain front that comes in. I've seen it knock common loons down. I've had a friend get a parasitic Jaeger in the middle of Wisconsin, nowhere near water. This wall of rain comes in, and he looks up, and there's a parasitic Jaeger low over his head with no water in sight. So it's just yet another element of the mystery of birding. There's so much going on right under our noses, and we are just beginning to become aware of it. It's so exciting.
Yep, and that's what opportunities like ERIO and that's opportunities like Modus that is making a lot of this tracking data publicly available, is that for birders and the public alike, we can enlighten everyone and teach them more about what's what's going on behind the scenes or above the clouds or happening at night, because as you know, a lot of the migrants and the movements we're missing are all happening at night as well.
Absolutely, and we've picked up on that with Bill Evans and the nocturnal migration monitoring with acoustic monitoring. And actually, birders even know this. You don't even have to have the recorder. You can just stand outside at night, especially when the cloud bank is low, and you can hear all these birds. You can see them on the next-rad radar, and then you can go out and listen and hear them coming over. So it's incredible, really. I mean, I feel like we're on the brink of just massive discoveries in this area in ornithology.
Yeah, many, not myself, but others have coined it, the golden age of ornithology, and that's really true. Between citizen science peaking, audio, GPS tracking, it's all and modeling, mathematically, and radar. There's just so many fields of ornithology that are really blossoming. It's going to be a really exciting decade ahead. Yeah.
Well, Stu, we've taken up more than half an hour of your time. Thank you so much for talking with us. It's been awesome.
No, it's been my pleasure. I'm sorry ERIO left you swiftly, but well, she may come back. Who knows? But so hopefully we'll have another opportunity to chat in the future. And if you're ever making your way into Ontario, let me know. We'll take care of you.
Cool.
We will absolutely do that. Thanks again, Stu. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon, hopefully.
Cheers. It was my pleasure. Good birding.
Bye.
Thank you.